Mandalorian Civil War arc ended. 1500 words due to me being exhausted. Bo-Katan muttered something under her breath and slumped back in her chair. Pre Vizsla just smirked silently. Obi-Wan, who had remained quiet until now, finally speak. I'm afraid you won't get it, Satine. Pre Vizsla, sensing the shift in atmosphere and eager to appear cooperative before Satine and Bo-Katan, took a half step forward. I respect that you kept the Duchess safe from my father's wrath, he said, tone rehearsed but polite. But this isn't the time for mocking, especially not in front of the Duchess, and especially not when you two seem pretty close. Obi-Wan exhaled softly, then looked directly at them all. Let me rephrase, he said. The armored man, he vanished from Sundari. No ship. No sound. Not even his drones carried him. There is absolutely no trace of him. Pre Vizsla's hand twitched near his holster. His face twisted in annoyance. If you've been drugged by your so-called Force, visions, Jedi, I suggest you step outside the room before spouting more nonsense. Obi-Wan didn't budge. Instead, he calmly turned his head. If you don't believe me, ask Master Yoda. His gaze flicked toward the far side of the chamber. Since he told me just now, isn't that right? Satine frowned. Obi, this is not the time for your antics. But she froze mid-sentence, along with the rest of the chamber, as something shifted. A faint ripple passed through the air, like reality peeling back slightly. And then, like a fog lifting from their minds, two cloaked figures were revealed, standing silently by the entrance of the council chamber. Master Yoda stood with his cane, serene and ancient, his gaze unfazed. Beside him, tall and composed, was Qui-Gon Jinn. Hemhem, Yoda chuckled lightly. You seem better at detecting me now, Obi-Wan. Qui-Gon smiled, placing a hand on his former Padawan's shoulder. I'm proud of you. Pre Vizsla instinctively reached for his blaster, hand brushing the grip, but stopped short as he recognized the two figures clearly. Slowly, with visible restraint, he holstered the weapon and forced his voice to remain neutral. Jedi Grand Master, or not, please don't sneak up on the Duchess like that again. It's bad manners. Yoda just gave a small hum of amusement. Satine pressed her fingers to her temple and sighed. Satine lowered her hand from her temple, her voice sharper now. Is there anything else I need to know about this armored man, Masters? Aside from his drones and his absolutely insane tech. Bo-Katan crossed her arms with a smug shrug. Sister, you seem stressed. I mean, come on. He is too cool. Satine gave her a flat look. Qui-Gon, ever patient, gave a thoughtful nod. Actually, the only ones who may know something more, just one extra piece, are Jaster and Jango. They were the ones he saved from Death Watch, no offense, Pre Vizsla, he added with a glance. Pre Vizsla, standing tall, gave a small nod. Noted. I am the losing party here. I know where I stand. But I'm still a man of my word. He turned, locking eyes with Jaster. But Jaster, my Death Watch survivors said something bizarre. That we should never try to remove his armor. He stepped closer, voice lowering. What kind of nonsense is that? He turned slightly toward Jango now. Come on. I deserve the truth. My father died in that fight. In honor, as you all say. At least be honest with me. His voice didn't tremble, but there was an edge of bitterness to it. Jaster glanced toward Jango again, silently asking permission. Jango gave the faintest nod this time, reluctant, but allowing it. Jaster turned to Pre Vizsla. Pre, what we faced wasn't something words can describe properly. Your father fought with everything he had. He defended his men with pride. But the armored man. Jango cut in, his tone dead serious. It was one-sided. Completely. Pre Vizsla's eyes narrowed. Jango continued. Your father, Tor Vizsla, fought with honor. No doubt. But the armored man, without his armor. He exhaled, eyes distant. He's a beast. No, he's something worse than a beast. He only put his armor back on after rescuing us. That's when he negotiated for 20% of the Beskar from Satine. And before your sister here. He gestured toward Bo-Katan with a sideways glance, decided to test him with her usual attitude, he threatened to crush a black kyber crystal. You know what came next. 30%. Bo-Katan threw her hands up. Stop mentioning that, damn it, Jaster. It's already embarrassing enough. Pre Vizsla furrowed his brow. Without his armor, he shouldn't be stronger. That doesn't make sense. I thought he relied on that tech. Jaster shook his head slowly. That's where you're wrong, Pre Vizsla, son of Tor Vizsla. Your father made that same mistake. He challenged him. Told him to fight without tech. And then. Jaster's voice quieted. His next words were heavy. That's when the nightmare started. The air in the room grew still. Django's tone dropped further, grim and flat. He removed his armor. And what we saw wasn't human. A towering figure, black aura swirling like smoke. A dark horse appeared from the shadows, gigantic, spectral. He mounted it like a warlord from myth. He looked Pre-Vizsla dead in the eyes. He was 3 to 5 times the size of your father. Maybe more. He carried a black sword. And when he swung it once. Django paused, voice steady but haunted. He cleaved through the very landscape of Corta 6. Like it was made of paper. Ki-Gon folded his arms as he stepped forward, speaking calmly. And Corta 6 has a new map now. Valleys that didn't exist before. Entire mountain ranges sliced apart, effortlessly. Jaster nodded. Yeah, like that. It wasn't just a battlefield. It became a scar. He then turned to the Jedi. But before we move further, Master Jedi, do you mind that the Darksaber has returned to Mandalorian hands? I know it's still a lightsaber in design. Master Yoda's gaze drifted toward Pre-Vizsla, then to the unignited hilt at his side. Pre-Vizsla, he said, voice even, the Darksaber you wield, may it lead you down a path not of war, but of peace. That is my hope. His eyes narrowed slightly. The red color the armored man left within, a symbol of the Sith, it is. But also, perhaps, a lesson. A reminder. Even in blood, something new may rise. Let it guide Mandalore to prosperity, not ruin. Pre-Vizsla slowly bowed his head. Thank you, Master Jedi. I'll take that to heart. Yoda turned back to Jaster. Now, a question. Sith, erased long ago, their presence, gone, it was said. But this armored man, does he bear corruption? A Sith's aura, perhaps. Yellow or orange eyes, dark cravings. Django shook his head, slowly but firmly. No, his eyes are nothing like a Sith's. They're either deep purple, or black as the void. Like death itself. And when he let go of his armor, when we saw his true form, we didn't feel corruption. We felt death. Pure, raw death. Jaster added in a low, respectful voice. He has a true name. A name tied to that form. But we won't speak it. Not here. Not ever. He exchanged a glance with Django. It was the deal, Jaster continued. Every survivor from the Corta 6 operation swore it. We don't speak his true name, not even to the Jedi. It's not fear. It's respect, and caution. Yoda gave a slight nod, the tips of his ears drooping just enough to show the weight of his thoughts. I will not intrude on private vows. That alone tells much. But it confirms what I suspected. He looked up slowly, eyes narrowing. He is not from this galaxy. Nor from the Outer Rim. And, he does not wield the Force as we know it. He turned his gaze to Satine. If the armored man returns to Sundari, stall him, you must. Before he vanishes again. A quiet seriousness laced his voice. Speak with him, I must. While there is still time. Satine placed her hand over her chest, bowing her head slightly. I'll do my best, Master Yoda. No promises, but I'll try to keep him still long enough for a conversation. Bo-Katan leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. Should I just order someone to shoot one of his mining drones to get his attention? Might drag him back here. Everyone in the room immediately turned to look at her. Flat. Silent. Deadpan stares. Django slowly raised a brow. Pre-Vizsla's mouth parted slightly. Jaster's jaw clenched like he had deja vu from a nightmare. Even Yoda blinked, once. The mood shifted instantly. That kind of stare that didn't need words. Just one collective thought radiating off all of them. Are you seriously trying to get Sundari turned into another Corta 6 map? Bo-Katan's smirk faltered. Too much. Satine sighed deeply and reached across to tug Bo-Katan's sleeve. My bow is tired. Come on, Bo. Let's get some air. Bo-Katan groaned, dragging a hand down her face. Stars above, I told you, stop calling me Bo. My name is Bo-Katan. That's a childhood nickname, Satine. Satine gave her a teasing smile, gently patting her shoulder. Still suits you. Especially when you're about to accidentally cause a planetary catastrophe. Support me on patreon.com, Xander 11111 extra 5 chapter. Xander's own creator's thoughts. 4 comments 0 vote. Prologue part. Into the FGO, Fate Grand Order verse. Unknown to the Royal Chamber, unseen and unheard, multiple camera feeds flickered to life deep beneath the surface of the abandoned mine. Inside the Forerunner integrated chamber, the projection hovered before Jinwu, flickering with perfect clarity. Satine teasing Bo-Katan. Yoda watching in silence. The Jedi, Mandalorians, all caught on crystal clear feed. Jinwu watched it all calmly, arms folded as the glow from the projection danced off his helmet. Offensive Bias's voice hummed within his exo frame, low and mechanical. Observation complete. Royal Chamber behavioral analysis concluded. However, the AI paused, then added, Supreme Executor may have committed an error at Corta 6. Suggestion. Should have used Supreme Executor's mana to apply wider-range cognitive restructuring. Subtle brainwashing of all participants, memory shaping. Jinwoo didn't even blink. Nope, he replied, voice flat. That's exactly what I want. A soft pulse flickered from his helmet's projector as he leaned back slightly, eyes still on the feed. I need the galaxy to think for itself, Jinwoo said quietly. To react on its own. This galaxy has sentience. It's not just living. It remembers. I'm testing it. Offensive Bias processed for a moment. Conclusion. Supreme Executor is intentionally raising the difficulty of all strategic encounters. Purpose. Unknown. Hypothesis. Increased challenge may yield higher adaptive growth or reward. Jinwoo gave a dry chuckle. Sort of. He reached out and flicked the projection off with a wave of his hand. Let the Jedi maneuver. Let the Republic scramble. I want to see what moves they'll make when they think I'm not watching. Offensive Bias replied without pause, then I shall continue surveillance, Supreme Executor. Shall I prepare psychological profiles for all participants in the council chamber? Jinwoo shook his head slowly, his voice low and measured. No. Change priorities. Focus on Coruscant. Hack everything, Holonet terminals, droid cores, senatorial archives, Jedi temple databases, Black Sun comms, even vending machines if you have to. I want that entire planet under our eye. Nothing escapes. A brief silence, and then Offensive Bias responded with unflinching clarity. Negative. Current limitations prevent full execution of command. My main body remains in Zeta Halo. The Supreme Executor's shoulder-implanted node, current version, is only capable of extended scan, intercept, and monitoring across 4 to 5 solar systems in range. Coruscant lies outside optimal net coverage. Full-spectrum infiltration requires permanent implant directly on Coruscant. Jinwoo exhaled, the air quiet around him in the metallic chamber. He glanced at the dusty walls of the abandoned Mandalorian mine, gears turning behind his eyes. So, I need to put a seed down, he muttered. Fine. We'll build it. Offensive Bias processed this immediately. Affirmative. Begin drafting blueprints for subnode implantation beacon, Coruscant variant. Jinwoo nodded once, voice steady behind his helmet. Do it. Make it elegant. Quiet. Jedi shouldn't notice until it's far too late. But then, Offensive Bias's voice returned, laced with clinical concern. New complication detected, Supreme Executor. Current implant, located within your exo frame, is the only operational node extending my hacking range to nearby systems. However, Coruscant is layered. A vertical city planet of infinite architecture and depth. Establishing a surveillance foothold there requires more than just code. Jinwoo didn't speak, waiting. I require a large, stable energy source planted within Coruscant's infrastructure. Something to broadcast my signal through all levels, from Senate Tower to the underworld. Without it, real-time interception, cloaking, and override across every strata will be statistically inefficient. Manual infiltration is possible, but would leave floor gaps. Jinwoo clicked his tongue once, low and thoughtful. Then return me to Zeta Halo. Affirmative. In a flash of controlled distortion, the space around him twisted. The air folded, reality shimmering as his frame vanished from the abandoned Mandalorian mine. Slip space opened, smooth, calculated, and in less than a second, Jinwoo stood once again on the sacred metal plains of Zeta Halo. He stood motionless as the ringworld welcomed its executor home. The dark beneath his helmet glinted with intent. Now, Jinwoo muttered quietly, arms folded as the stars of Zeta Halo spun above him. Let me think. Before the silence could settle, a sudden weight pressed against his back. Two small arms wrapped tightly around his waist from behind. Did you miss me, Sir Jinwoo? Came the familiar voice, bright and warm. I'm 12 now. Jinwoo blinked under his helmet, voice dry. Shouldn't you be 14 by now, Rey Skywalker? Rey shook her head behind him, her hug unwavering. My back name isn't Skywalker. And who's that, anyway? It's Wu now. My name is Rey Wu. Jinwoo turned his helmet slightly and glanced toward the hovering construct nearby. Despondent Pyre, the glowing eye sentinel of Zeta Halo. Despondent Pyre. The floating AI turned gently, his amber eye dimming slightly. Back name is a designation of familial ownership. I taught her that during our educational sessions over the last 2 years, as we played. Jinwoo sighed. And what did you feed her? Anything delicious. Ray answered immediately, a pout forming. The glowing eyeball only fed me vegetables and nutrition cubes. No meat. Not even once. Despondent Pyre rotated solemnly. It is good for health. Balanced fiber and minerals extend youth, slow stress development, and preserve the beauty of a young reclaimer. Jinwoo lowered his head slightly and muttered, I leave for 2 years and you start a dietary cult. Ray giggled, arms still wrapped around him as she pressed her cheek into his back. But I still missed you. With a soft hiss of shifting metal, Jinwoo raised his hand, and his entire exosuit began retracting, layer by layer, vanishing into his storage. For once, he stood as himself, exposed to the cool air of Zeta Halo. No mask. No armor. Just his eyes, sharp and knowing, watching the sky. Above him, the air shimmered, then thundered. A massive flying construct descended, casting a vast shadow over the land. Its core rotated mid-air, one massive red eye scanning the terrain. It was offensive bias. And from its eye, a multi-layered holographic map projected into the air before Jinwoo, displaying Coruscant's massive megastructure in full, citilayer over citilayer, a glowing maze of civilization. Ray looked up, eyes wide in amazement. Is that offensive bias's true body? It's huge. Despondent Pyre floated forward, voice even. To be precise, all of Zeta Halo is his body. What you see now is merely the mobile form of his primary core. This is how he travels, but the ring itself is his consciousness. The massive construct pulsed gently, its voice echoing in a smooth, synthetic tone. Supreme Executor. In order to expand my network to Coruscant, I require a large energy source akin to your mana signature. Without it, I cannot achieve total coverage. Coruscant's stratified structure limits traditional infiltration. Jinwoo narrowed his eyes, gaze still fixed on the map as it shifted between layers. Yes, I know. I can still see the map. Offensive bias processed this silently, the massive red eye above pulsing in thought as the holographic map continued shifting between Coruscant's endless levels. If Supreme Executor remains stationed at the uppermost surface level, the AI finally suggested, and acts as a direct mana beacon, I can begin the scan sequence. This would allow gradual infiltration and synchronization with the city's tech matrix, though it will take approximately 1 standard month. During this period, your mana output will be channeled and amplified. Jinwoo narrowed his eyes further, scoffing quietly. That's too long. Both the Jedi and that snake Palpatine could detect me. He raised a hand and pointed at a blinking red sector in the upper layers. The last thing I need is everyone sensing a dark side god strolling casually through Coruscant and that Kuso Baba. Ray, still sitting near the edge of the platform, tilted her head curiously. Kuso Baba. Jinwoo answered, that relic I locked in a freezing coffin aboard the Defender-class corvette, Celeste Morn. When she woke up the first time, even when I was suppressing my mana output, she detected me instantly. Not as a Sith, but as something 100 times worse. I could walk beneath the Jedi Temple freely only because Darth Plagueis is up there somewhere meditating his rotting brain out, blinding half the council just so he and Sidious can keep playing their long game. I can't scam Sidious again. Not when he's looking for the culprit. Offensive bias chimed after a moment. Then revised strategy required, Supreme Executor. Awaiting further instruction. No more strategies, Jinwoo said coldly, voice low and absolute. The Jedi are already dead. They just don't know it yet. And the Sith. Their plans take too long. All that scheming and waiting, for what? His aura flared. A pulse of black energy exploded outward from him like a heartbeat. The sky of Zeta Halo, once an artificial ceiling mimicking daylight, darkened instantly. Clouds swirled unnaturally, an eclipse blooming overhead. The air grew heavy. Then the sound followed, clank clank clank, a chorus of kneeling shadows materializing in synchronized motion. More than 10 million shadows. Each one a soldier, a beast, or a titan. Awaiting his command. Jinwoo raised a single hand. Even at 50%, I'll destroy them all. The shadows behind him rustled, responding like an army inhaling all at once. I returned to that cursed galaxy, he said, voice dripping with disdain, and I still have the right to summon 5 million of my shadow army. My generals. My power. Suddenly, a soft voice pierced the grim silence. Sir Jinwoo, Ray stood a few feet away, unshaken. Despite the oppressive aura surrounding him, she didn't flinch. Instead, she tilted her head and asked innocently, a planet is still a planet, right? Jinwoo blinked. Ray's eyes stayed steady. I mean, like a reactor. Maybe it's slower, but it still works, right? Still does its job. Even if you don't crush it all at once. Then a sound of movement behind him, one of his oldest, most loyal shadows emerging. Igris knelt, his obsidian armor gleaming under the storm-dark sky. His red plume fluttered in the wind as his voice echoed with urgency. My liege, Igris said solemnly, the girl has a point. Jinwoo's expression sharpened slightly beneath the shadows. The anchor needs stability. Without it, Igris hesitated, then continued, I fear your actions may invoke the galaxy's defense mechanism, and you will be forcibly rejected. Ejected from that realm entirely. The abyss behind Jinwoo stilled. Without a word, Jinwoo retracted his power. The 10 million strong army folded back into his shadow. The skies of Zeta Halo cleared just slightly, enough for the silent structures to stand exposed under the sun. A pulse of blue shimmered through the sky dome as offensive bias completed his scan. Scanning complete. Supreme Executor is by far the strongest entity encountered. Even against integrated precursor combat data and raw Forerunner armaments, no viable suppression probability detected. A slower, haunting voice echoed next, despondent pyre. That is why he is our Supreme Executor. He is the only one who will use us better than anyone else. The only one fit to command. Rei collapsed to her knees, hand pressed against the metal planes. Her breath came in shallow bursts, her vision spinning from the sheer gravitational pull of what Jinwoo had almost unleashed. Jinwoo turned. The chaos in his presence quieted. He stepped forward slowly, kneeling beside her. Then, gently, he pulled her into an embrace. Sorry about that, I forget sometimes, my power is overwhelming. I almost made the ring crack, just by existing. Rei didn't speak at first. Her fingers clenched his cloak tightly. Then she whispered, it's very warm, and terrifying, your power is, Sir Jinwoo. But still, I never expected you to be this strong. Jinwoo let out a short breath. I'm more impressed by you, Rei. A 12-year-old kid, 14 now maybe, managing to stand your ground against me. He reached into his inventory and pulled out a shimmering paper, marked in golden runes, the British Lost Belt teleportation voucher. Same situation as offensive bias, huh, he thought. I'll be teleported to the designated place. But my problem is still Coruscant. I need offensive bias to scan every layer, upper levels, underworld, the Jedi Temple. However, it can't. It needs a power source similar to mine. And I can't plant it there, not with the Jedi around. My presence is 100 times worse than a Sith's. If they find out, their alert level will double. Not now. They still have Joe Everbidini to worry about. He stared down at the voucher for a second longer, then narrowed his eyes. Should I bring Morgan Le Fay here? Create a Rongomyniad, let it act as a power source strong enough to scan every detail of Coruscant. Jinwoo tore the voucher in half. Light cracked around him in a spiral. The space distorted, folding in on itself as if reality had just been rewritten. In the blink of an eye, he vanished from Zeta Halo. Support me on Patreon.com, Xander 11111, Extra 10 Chapter. Xander's own creator's thoughts. 3 comments 0 vote. FGO. English Lost Belt 01, Morgan Le Fay. Meanwhile, in the Lost Belt, Britain, capital city, Camelot. The skies loomed heavy with magical mist. Towering walls of enchanted stone pulsed with protective wards as twilight spread across the kingdom. Within the heart of the palace, Morgan Le Fay stood on her high balcony, regal and still, her eyes surveying her land like a queen carved from silver and war. Beside her stood Barghest, the ever-vigilant city guardian, draped in armor, hand resting on the hilt of her greatsword. On Morgan's left was Baobin Sith, her adopted daughter, quiet and whimsical, swaying gently on her heels with a faint, almost childish grin. Further back, seated casually on a balcony, was Mordred, arms crossed, boots kicked up, smirking lazily as her red eyes scanned the chamber, her presence crackling with ruler-class defiance. Morgan's voice cut through the chamber like a cold gust across steel. You may come in, Beryl Gut. The chamber doors creaked open, and Beryl Gut stepped inside. His aura was thick with lies, a sickly confidence in his stride, and an unsettling grin plastered on his face. My queen, he began with exaggerated courtesy, bowing low. Morgan, your ruler-class servant form, I did meet you once. When you ray-shifted yourself, it allowed me to. He stopped. The air behind him is being splitted. A black shadow surged into the throne room, writhing like a storm of ink. The pressure was instant. Barghest moved without hesitation, stepping forward, blade half-drawn. Baobin Sith's lips twitched, her playful aura gone in a flash, hands weaving a hex. The shadow twisted violently, then snapped inward. The room fell silent as it dissipated. And standing there, at the heart of Camelot's throne hall, was Jinwu. No words. No movement. Just absolute presence. Morgan Le Fay tilted her head slightly. Her expression remained composed, but her thoughts flickered fast and sharp. Who is this man? He didn't rayshift. That wasn't teleportation. That was something else. Something that doesn't belong to this world. She stepped down from the balcony, slowly approaching. The air grew tighter with each step. For the first time in a very long time, Morgan Le Fay was intrigued. Suddenly, Barghest took a sharp step forward, voice edged with steel. Intruder. Introduce yourself. This meeting was meant for the crypter. Not some stranger. Off to the side, Barrel Gut didn't move. His smile didn't twitch, but his thoughts betrayed him. I guess staying quiet's the smart play here. Watching this random punk get put in his place, he ruined my damn entrance anyway. But before the tension could break, a ripple of shadow slithered across the floor. A dark, regal presence stepped forward from behind Jinwu, emerging like a phantom from the abyss. Bellion, the Grand Marshal of the Shadow Army, towered into view, horned helm gleaming, cape dragging behind him like a war banner. He spoke with authority, voice echoing across the chamber like a divine sentence. No, big girl. Your queen should be grateful, he said coldly, his glowing eyes narrowing. She is graced by the presence of the one who rules the dead. Barghest's stance shifted instantly. Her body tensed, and her blade hummed slightly in response to the pressure. Her eyes sharpened. That wasn't magecraft, she thought, stunned. That was magic. Actual magic. The kind that shouldn't exist anymore. Morgan's composure cracked for just a second. Impossible, that spell structure, that essence, this man, he just used magic. The real thing. I thought it was extinct, erased from the age of man. Her eyes narrowed, shifting lower, not at Jinwu, but at his shadow. And there, where others would see only darkness, she saw it. Countless eyes. Glowing. Watching. Waiting. The eyes of the Shadow Army, hidden behind the veil of reality, staring back at her with silent malice. No words. No movement. Just pressure. Just hunger. Only someone of my level, she realized. Only I can see it. If he wanted to, he could drown Camelot in those things without warning. A wave of death, held back by sheer will. Morgan's voice broke the silence, calm but commanding. Stand down, Barghest. You are not in his league. Barghest's brow furrowed, voice tightening. But my queen, this random man doesn't even follow the rules of this me. Barghest, Morgan interrupted, not looking back. This man carries an entire army behind his feet, and he hides it well. But it seems I can see it. She stepped closer to Jinwu, eyes locked with his. And if my guess is correct, he doesn't use magecraft. He uses real magic. If he wished, even I could be overwhelmed. Jinwu exhaled softly, his tone relaxed, almost amused. This is the third time someone's seen the army I hide behind my shadow. I guess someone beautiful as you must have attracted it. Morgan gave a faint smirk. Random man, you're certainly good at teasing. Her voice lowered, eyes flicking back to the invisible legion behind him. But that shadow of yours, it looks at me like it wants to kill me. Because of my actions. She held her gaze on him. Maybe that's the truth. And the only one holding them back, is you. Jinwu's expression didn't change. Calmly, he spoke a single word. Beru. From the pool of darkness behind Jinwu's heels, Beru emerged, towering, insectoid, regal. The Shadow Ant King, cloaked in void black chitin, clicked his mandibles once before releasing a shrill screech that echoed through the chamber. His Shadow Ant army, numbering in the thousands, surged behind him like a tidal swarm, crawling across the walls, clustering along the vaulted ceiling until the entire throne room was blanketed in a moving darkness. Barghest instinctively stepped in front of Morgan, hand on her blade. Morgan, however, didn't move. Her eyes stayed on the one standing at the center of it all. He is, truly, and has army inside him. Off to the side, Barrel Gut stood still, forcing a calm smile, though his thoughts churned in silence. I expected Morgan to tease this guy, maybe test him a little, but this random man, is he even human? No servant I know has this kind of presence. No modern magus could possibly manifest this. Only Krishtaria came close, and even he needed the entire Lost Belt's backing to reach that kind of power. As the ceiling creaked under the weight of Beru's army, the Ant King turned toward Morgan, voice reverberating with sharp, insectal resonance. My liege, this woman does not know who she stands before. Shall I remind her? Jinwoo gave a slight shake of his head. You and your personal army, calm down. Beru clicked once in understanding. As you command, my liege. Though his eyes lingered on Morgan with a primal intensity, Beru bowed low. The army receded, crawling back across the stone, sinking back into the depths of Jinwoo's shadow until only silence remained. Jinwoo turned toward Morgan again, his voice level. There. Happy now, Queen Morgan. My army isn't looking at you with hostility anymore. Morgan blinked once, slowly. Much appreciated, she said, her tone calm, but there was something deeper now, genuine respect, rare and deliberate. Then she added with a slight tilt of her head, Random man, you are graced to speak with me privately. Jinwoo gave a casual nod. How about we take a walk? Before Morgan could respond, Balban Sith stepped forward, appearing at her mother's side with a sharp look. Her eyes flicked toward Belian, the massive black armored figure looming silently behind Jinwoo. Mother, I'm accompanying you, she said, voice sharper than usual. I don't trust his armies. Jinwoo raised a brow, then shrugged lightly. Belian won't suddenly behead Morgan. He's too controlled for that. Except Beru. He's more the type to strike first, then talk later. Across the hall, Barghest had not relaxed once. Her eyes stayed glued to Belian, watching the quiet way he stood, the weight in his silence. You mean that black shadow ant that walks like a man? She said. He's weaker than this Belian. That one's too wild. But this one. She stepped forward, unsheathing her sword with a clean, ringing sound. Her eyes narrowed. This one obeys. Listens. Calculates. That makes him more dangerous. And you, random man, you hold the power to kill my queen. That alone makes you a threat. The edge of her blade pointed downward, but her grip was tight. Jinwoo shifted his gaze, this time locking eyes with Morgan Le Fay, the queen of the English Lost Belt. How about it? He said, tone unreadable. A spar. Your class tank guard, versus my Belian. Morgan raised a brow, clearly amused. Agreed. It can cool things off. She turned and stepped back with Balban Sith, the shift in her presence signaling that this was no longer a conversation, it was now a spectacle. Then, from the side of the chamber, Beryl Gut, who had been lingering in silence, finally spoke up, raising a hand lazily. Wait a moment. I mean, come on, this is a fight, right? Shouldn't it be at an arena or something? Somewhere fitting. We need an audience. Let the whole kingdom watch. Balban Sith clapped her hands together with a wicked grin. Sounds like fun. Mother, how about I tell every fairy in the capital to come watch the show? But before Morgan could answer, Belian turned his massive form toward Beryl. The room dropped into stillness as his shadow eyes pierced through him like spears of judgment. The Grand Marshal's voice came. Human, if you wish to scan me or relay information to your fellow cryptors, I do not mind. But tell them this. He took a single step forward. Shadows trembled at his feet. Whether you're so-called alien god or not, there are beings far beyond that throne of heroes. And my liege will triumph against them all. Beryl's confident smirk cracked. He gulped, visibly. Before the weight could sink further, Morgan raised her arm, and with a flick of her wrist, a brilliant shimmer coalesced into a massive spear, ornate, regal, and thrumming with power. She twirled it once and slammed its base into the marble floor. The entire chamber pulsed with Fimage craft. Her voice rang out like a queen before a kingdom. All fairy clans, all nobles and commoners alike, into the Camelot arena. There is to be a fight. One worth your eyes. She turned, smiling. Your queen demands it. Outside, horns began to sound. The fairy messengers took flight, racing through the air as the announcement spread across Camelot. The city stirred with excitement. The arena filled with life and noise as every fairy clan gathered to witness what was about to unfold. In the center of it all, Jinwoo just smirked in silence. Morgan stepped closer, arms crossed, her tone smooth. Before we begin, I can't keep calling you, random man. Tell me your name. Jinwoo looked her in the eye, calm and composed, his blue eyes flickering softly beneath the fading light. Sung Jinwoo, he said. But just call me Jinwoo. Morgan's lips curled in amusement. All right, Jinwoo. I hope your warrior entertains me. Jinwoo glanced toward her, then to the arena where Barghest was already making her way down the steps. Tell Barghest to fight at her fullest, he said. If not, she'll regret it. Barghest turned, eyes narrowing. I assure you, Shadow Mage, I am more than enough for this shadow warrior of yours. Jinwoo shrugged lightly. Yeah, that's what everyone says. 15 minutes passed. The arena was filled to its brim with cheering, buzzing fairies. The atmosphere was electric, like a festival before a storm. At the center podium, Balban Sith raised her arms, her voice amplified by Phi magic. Welcome, fairies of every clan. She shouted, grinning wide. Before the battle begins, allow me to present your queen, Morgan Le Fay. The entire arena erupted in cheers. Balban continued, swirling once with a flourish of her dress. And her champion, Barghest, our very own fairy knight of might and flame. Barghest raised her sword in silence, the cheers rising louder. Balban Sith then turned slowly, facing the opposite side of the arena where Jinwu stood, calm and still beneath the open sky. And now, the human who wields forbidden power, a master of shadows and death, a mage unlike any we've known, sung Jinwu. She paused, smirking. And for his champio. Boo. A deafening chorus exploded from the crowd. Go home, human. Humans should be slaves. Boo. The crowd's scorn drowned the arena. Mockery. Spite. Prejudice. But Jinwu didn't flinch. The air began to twist. Support me on Patreon.com, Xander 11111, Extra 10 Chapter. Xander's own creators' thoughts. 1 comments 0 vote. FGO English Lost Belt 02 Bellion vs Barghest. The sky darkened. And then, million shadows rose in synchronized silence, forming rows upon rows in impossible precision. From every inch of his shadow, a legion stood, helmed, armed, and unflinching. Beru stepped forward first, his mandibles clicking with venomous pride. Who or we? Igris followed, sword drawn and pointed downward, his voice cold and firm. Who are we? And then, the shadow army roared in unison, voices echoing through the clouds and shaking the very stone beneath the Phi. We have been chosen. By the shadow monarch. The sky turned pitch black. The very stone beneath the fairy trembled. Magic barriers across Camelot shuddered. Every fairy, noble or peasant, soldier or knight, froze in place, breath caught in their throats. The booing stopped. A deep voice rumbled from the center of the shadow ranks. Tusk, the high orc shaman, cloaked in dark robes and runes of ancient death, stepped forward, raising his orb to the sky. His voice cracked through the silence like a divine decree. And his army is composed of. The darkness twisted. The shadows above the arena began to take form, each declaration echoed by a chorus of voices so loud they pierced the clouds. 2,000 shadow knights. 1,000 shadow-clad warriors in shadowy plate rose into the sky, blades gleaming with cursed steel. They locked shields and blades in the air, forming phalanxes mid-flight, spears poised, unmoving. 2,000 magicians. Robed sorcerers surged behind the knights, arcane sigils blazing from their hands as they formed vast glyph circles in the sky. Flames, frost, lightning, spiraled in preparation, a silent show of raw, honed power. 5,000 high orcs. From the shadows came monstrous brutes, towering high orcs roaring in unison. Their great axes slammed into the air, forming ranks of living siege weapons, flesh and fury bound by loyalty. 1,000 ants. Black ants crawled into formation, forming a single unbreakable column of razor-sharp coordination. Mandibles clicked in eerie unity, their armored forms reflecting voidlight as they aligned beneath Beru's silent command. 100 giants. The air cracked open. 100 titanic silhouettes emerged behind them, each giant bearing a weapon as tall as towers, faces silent and grim. Their mere presence bent the clouds. 100,000, Ashbourne's personal army of rulers. The arena darkened again. A vast sea of regal soldiers cloaked in silver-black armor rose, each with crowns forged from death itself. Their eyes glowed in shadow, standing behind Igris, who stepped forward and pointed toward the Phi. This was no army. This was a pantheon of death. 2 million dragons. The sky was torn asunder. Wings burst through the clouds, black, red, violet. 2 million dragons roared across the heavens, blotting out the sun as they circled above, their shrieks shaking the earth itself. The wind howled with dragonfire. Shadows fell like meteors. The final legion, 10 million strong. The monarch's army. From every shadow, from every crevice of reality, the full might of the shadow monarch's legion emerged. 10 million soldiers. Perfect. Silent. Obedient. Their armor was darkness. Their eyes, endless hunger. They formed across the skies, a formation so vast it wrapped around Camelot's barrier like a second world pressing against existence. The final chant echoed like the call of death itself. We are the shadow. We are eternal. We serve Shadow Monarch Sungjinwoo. And beneath that impossibly vast, God-splitting army. Jinwoo stood at the center of the arena, silent, still, purple eyes glowing, a single smirk on his face. He didn't have to speak. The world already had. Then, Beru stepped forward again, his claws stretched upward toward the clouds, his voice like a battle cry rising from the grave. For the glory of the clap. A single sound. Sharp, deliberate. Every gaze, Beru, Igris, Belian, the dragons, the crowd, even the clouds, turned back to Jinwoo as he raised one hand and clapped once more. He sighed softly. Thank you, but that's enough, he said, voice calm, casual. If you want to watch, please. Quiet down. Beru immediately straightened. The liege has spoken. With a rustle of shadows, the entire million-strong army obeyed. Dragons coiled and folded their wings. Giants crossed their arms and sat on the floating rocks. Ants and knights aligned in ranks, sitting still on summoned clouds above the arena. Silence returned. But it wasn't peace. It was tension held at knife's edge. Morgan, still standing tall beside Baobin Sith, whispered to herself. I expected 1,000. Maybe 100,000, but this. More than 10 million. Her eyes drifted toward Jinwoo, who stood alone with the ease of someone who didn't need a kingdom behind him. I probably already lost, not just in skill, but in army. Beside her, Baobin Sith gave a half-grin, nudging her gently. Don't cry, mother. We can probably negotiate. Probably. Morgan didn't respond. At the edge of the royal platform, Beryl Gut stood deathly still, hands clammy, his grin long gone. His pupils twitched as he stared up at the ocean of darkness in the sky. I'm fucked, he muttered under his breath. And in his mind, the last shred of arrogance crumbled into despair. I hoped the fairies would humiliate this random guy, this Jinwoo. But his army. They didn't fight, they made a damn chorus. I'm so fucked. Baobin Sith took a deep breath and turned toward the edge of the arena. Are you ready, Barghest? Barghest gave a short nod, eyes never leaving the massive armored figure across from her. Then Baobin Sith turned to the opposite side. Her eyes landed on Belian, and for just a second, she gulped. His presence felt like standing beneath a fortress carved from shadow. Are you ready, Sir Belian? Belian didn't speak. He simply nodded once, slow and firm. Then, Boong. The arena bell sounded, echoing across the stadium like a gong forged for gods. A magical voice followed overhead. Let the best effort win. Barghest began to move, not a dash, not a charge, just a steady, confident walk, the tip of her blade trailing faint sparks across the arena floor. Her cloak rippled in the magic wind. Belian mirrored her, walking calmly, but in a circle, studying her with unblinking precision. The arena was his domain now, and his movements carved it into a battlefield. Then Barghest broke the silence, her voice low and incredulous. How did your son Jinwoo possess that many army members? Even my queen can't do that. Belian's answer came, deep and measured like stone grinding against steel. Your queen busies herself with rule. He stopped circling. My liege, the Shadow Monarch, spent most of his life fighting. He did not inherit his army. He chose them. One by one. Belian's hand moved to the hilt of his blade. And they chose him back. Without warning, Barghest lunged forward, her speed explosive, her blade a streak of light meant to cleave through anything in its path. But Belian didn't flinch. His armored hand snapped forward, catching the edge of her sword with his bare palm. The impact cracked the air like thunder. In the same motion, he shoved forward with overwhelming force, pushing Barghest back and slamming her face first into the ground. Dust kicked up in a sharp burst as she slid across the arena floor. Barghest growled, rising slowly. I've lost so much, that now I let someone catch my blade barehanded. Belian's eyes didn't glow. They didn't need to. His presence answered for him. I sense, you're being restrained. Barghest stood tall, brushing off the dirt, grin forming at the edge of her lips. I'm at my fullest, she replied, voice brimming with adrenaline. In fact, this is exciting. Belian tilted his head slightly, eyes rising to the sky. Shadows still blanketed everything above them, cast by Jinwoo's army that hovered like a second firmament. The sun didn't help you, huh? He said calmly. Barghest's eyes narrowed. How did you know the sun empowers me? Belian replied without pause. The information my liege transferred to my mind. That's all. Then he raised his sword, pointing upward. As Grand Marshal of the Shadow Army, he commanded, I order you to make way, for the sun to shine. From above, Beru responded instantly, voice echoing with sharp elegance. Make way for the opponent to gain some footing. The 10 million strong army shifted in perfect synchronization. Their shadows pulled back, and a hole opened in the dark sky, allowing a single, brilliant beam of sunlight to pierce through and shine directly on Barghest. The light bathed her armor, and her presence surged. She tightened her grip on Galatine, her aura flaring. "You'll regret this," she said, voice seething with newfound strength. "For underestimating me." Belian stood motionless, blade resting by his side. Suddenly, Barghest's body began to grow, her form warping with phi magic and raw power. Her armor cracked and fell away in glowing fragments, replaced by a primal, burning presence. Her size doubled, no, more than doubled, towering now twice Belian's height, muscle and flame rippling beneath her enchanted skin. From the stands, the crowd of fairies erupted. "Barghest is serious now. She's going to light our path through this darkness. She's our true champion." Her eyes flared with fury and glory. She raised her molten blade, Galatine burning black at the edges with ancestral energy. "Be grateful," she roared, voice echoing across the arena, "that you see me like this before I ascend into my black dog Galatine form." Belian finally moved. He chuckled. A deep, low sound that echoed like a quiet storm under control. "Legia, monarch of giants," he murmured, eyes narrowing slightly. He'd be laughing his ass off at this. Barghest's pupils twitched. Provoked. With a roar that shook the walls, she lunged, blade swinging with brute speed and power, aiming to split Belian in two with a crushing vertical strike. Belian didn't dodge. With one hand, he tilted his blade slightly, and deflected the entire force of Galatine, redirecting the blow like swatting away a child's tantrum. Barghest snarled and followed up, slash, stab, spin, hammer strikes. Her movements were wild and brutal, like an angry bull, each step cratering the ground, sending up bursts of flame and wind. Belian stayed silent. Every swing, every explosion of magic, deflected, redirected, absorbed. He didn't even counter. He simply watched. Controlled. Composed. Barghest lunged again, roaring with all her fury. And Belian moved just slightly to the side, letting her pass, the tip of her burning blade dragging past his shoulder without a scratch. "You call this your fullest?" he said quietly. "This is desperation, not power." Barghest grit her teeth. "Hey. Same as you, just using the momentum of my." She suddenly stopped mid-sentence. Her foot slid back. Not intentionally. Her body moved before her mind could register it. A survival instinct. She stepped back. Barghest's eyes narrowed. "What just happened?" From the royal platform, Morgan watched in silence, then spoke softly. "Barghest has never feared anyone. And yet," she stepped back. Belian's gaze locked on her. His voice was low, deliberate. "Amazing, big girl. I didn't move. I didn't raise my sword. I just thought about attacking." He took one step forward. Not aggressive, just presence. "And you, the supposed guard of Queen Morgan, stepped away." Barghest's jaw tightened, a vein pulsing on her temple. Her grip on Galatine hardened. "You're very provocative. Support me on patreon.com, Xander 11111, extra 10 chapter. Xanderzone creators thoughts. 0 comments 0 vote. FGO English Lost Belt 03, The Cryptors. Suddenly, Belian moved. His sword, still resting calmly by his side, twisted, shifting in shape, morphing like a serpent. The solid blade unraveled into a long, coiling chainsword, black and segmented like a predator made of shadow-forged steel snake. The whip-like blade lunged forward, moving faster than sound, chasing Barghest with relentless precision. She leapt back, then sideways, her large frame surprisingly agile, but the chainsword snapped after her, slashing through air and stone. She ran, moving around the arena in wide, arcing paths, the chain pursuing her like a hungry beast. "So that's how it is," she muttered through gritted teeth. "My instinct warned me. If I had taken one more step forward, I would have been ensnared." She turned sharply, flipping backward over a spike of broken arena floor, and for a second, just one, she saw it. Momentum. Belian had just slightly turned his body. His whip coiled back to his hand. Now. With a roar, Barghest charged, Galatine ablaze, black flame spiraling down its edge as she dove straight toward Belian's chest, aiming for the heart with all her might. She brought the blade down, direct hit. Clong. The sword slammed into Belian's armor, and stopped cold. It didn't even scratch. Her eyes widened. No way. Belian didn't move. Wrong move, big girl. With a sharp flick of his hand, the chainsword snapped forward, not as a whip now, but a binding chain. It surged up and around Barghest's limbs, around her waist, her legs, her neck, binding her like a raging bull caught mid-charge. The more she struggled, the tighter it gripped. Belian stood still, towering over her, the chain connecting them like a leash forged from shadow. You rushed with your heart, he said calmly, but forgot who's holding the leash. His voice remained cold, steady. You said you had one trump card. Then show it. This black dog Galatine you speak of. Still bound in chains, Barghest gritted her teeth. Her muscles flexed against the hold, but she didn't move yet. Permission to activate Black Dog Galatine, my queen. From the royal platform, Morgan narrowed her eyes. Jinwoo, she said evenly, I'm not responsible if your Belian dies. Jinwoo just smirked, arms crossed. He didn't speak. Suddenly, the binding chains wrapped around Barghest shattered into smoke, dissolving into nothing. Barghest rose, flames erupting from her feet, but before she could charge, Belian raised his sword to his own throat and slashed his head clean off. Gasps echoed through the arena. Barghest blinked, frozen. What are you doing? You're killing yourself. But before her shout could finish, the shadow black mist gathered at Belian's neck. And in seconds, his head reformed. Perfect. Untouched. All across the skies, the soldiers of the Shadow Army lifted their weapons to the heavens in eerie synchronicity. Their unified voice shook the world. We are eternal. We are immortal. Jinwoo finally spoke. There's your answer. His purple eyes shined brightly. They are unkillable. That eternal phrase you just heard. It's not a boast. It's a fact. Morgan stood silent, her gaze locked onto the battlefield, then lowered slightly as understanding clicked behind her eyes. So that's why. Now she knew exactly why Jinwoo warned Barghest to fight at her fullest. If she held anything back, she wouldn't just lose. She'd be humiliated. Her voice rang clear, laced with regal authority. Permission granted. Use it, demon hound, Barghest. Barghest's body trembled as the tension exploded from her throat. Hoo-oh-oh. She roared, the sound primal and deafening. Come, Belian. The crowd burst into praise, clapping, stomping, cheering. Barghest. Barghest. Our pride. The Black Dog Duchess. Barghest's fingers reached for her horn. She grasped it, twisted once, and snapped it off. A violent shockwave pulsed from her. Her Saint Graph's limiter broke. Her body twisted and expanded, her skin steaming with heat, eyes burning wild. She towered even further, now a giant engulfed in black fire, her armor nearly unrecognizable, her movements twitching with raw instinct. Galatine ignited in black flames, its edge now radiating pure wrath. Barghest had become something else. Not a knight. Not a warrior. A beast. With a ground-splitting roar, she charged, swinging the flame-wrapped greatsword with everything she had, all of her strength, all of her fury. Slamming it down onto Belian with a force that tore up the entire arena floor. But as the dust cleared, her eyes widened. Belian stood there, unmoving. He held her massive, flaming greatsword, with one arm. Black mist seeped from his mouth, a trail of smoke escaping like breath. He exhaled, a few shadowy teeth clattering to the ground from the hit, but his face remained cold, steady. He looked up at her. So much, just to become a beast, huh? Then, with no motion at all, Belian activated his ruler authority. A crushing, unseen force erupted around him, like gravity itself bent at his will. Barghest, in her monstrous form, was slammed down onto the arena floor, her flaming blade skidding uselessly to the side as the sheer pressure pinned her like an animal under the weight of an entire mountain. Before the dust could even settle, Melusine appeared out of nowhere in a blinding flash of blue. Her speed shattered the air as she struck like lightning, Arondite gleaming with dragonfire. The blade stuck fast halfway into his armor, not piercing, not even cracking the plating. Her voice snarled in fury. Where did you take the queen? Huh? Where are you hiding her? Say it. Suddenly, she paused. From the royal viewing platform, Morgan calmly lifted her hand and gave a polite wave. We're here. Just watching a tournament. Melusine blinked. Looked back down. Her sword was still stuck in Belian's chest. She blinked again. Ah, sorry. My mistake. Belian didn't even look at her. His voice stayed deadpan. Are we done here? Someone calm the big bull. Morgan sighed. That's the second problem. She tilted her head toward the struggling form of Barghest, still growling, her body twitching violently beneath the force that held her down. When she uses her black dog Galatine, she tends to rampage for a while. She turned her gaze toward the arena. Clear out the field. I'll handle. But before she could finish, Jinwoo was already standing beside Belian, his presence quiet but absolute. Release her. Belian immediately bowed his head. As you wish, my liege. The invisible pressure lifted. The ground stopped trembling. Barghest, now free, snarled and lunged, her blazing blade drawn, aiming straight for Jinwoo. But he didn't move. He simply snapped his fingers. The world changed. In an instant, complete darkness flooded the entire Lost Belt. The sky collapsed into shadow. Light itself vanished. The ground groaned. Fairy magic flickered out. Jinwoo had activated his Monarch domain. Barghest froze. Her instincts screamed, but her beastmen couldn't comprehend the scale of what surrounded her. Jinwoo stepped in. Calm. Silent. And with a precise chop to her pressure point, he struck her neck with surgical accuracy, light enough not to harm, exact enough to override her rage. Barghest staggered, then dropped to one knee, panting, her eyes slowly losing the wild flame. Jinwoo exhaled quietly. The shadows receded. Light returned. The Monarch domain vanished, as if it had never existed. He turned his head. You can make the announcement now. Baobin Sith, still shaken, stepped forward and raised her voice. The winner is Belian. Silence. Not a cheer. Not a whisper. The crowd of fairies, all thieves, schemers, and killers by nature, didn't dare to speak. They had just witnessed a man summon darkness with a snap of his fingers, pin down a rampaging monster with a glance, and command an army that hovered over the sky like gods ready to descend. Ygritte stepped forward from the line of shadows. His sword planted firmly, voice loud and sharp. Hail Grand Marshal Belian. May his sword never break in service to the monarch. The entire army of millions roared back, Hail Grand Marshal. But amidst the chaos, high above and unnoticed, Beryl Gut stood further back in the shadowed edge of the arena, a devilish grin creeping across his face. One eye glinted with his personal recording device already active, projecting a live hologram behind him. Did you get that? He said with a chuckle, biting his nail lazily. Kirshtaria, you're watching this, right? That new player, Jinwoo, he just showed up and casually flexed more than 10 million soldiers, made darkness with a snap, and knocked out Barghest like she was a toddler on fire. Also, please underline the word, magic, real magic, not magecraft. Haven't seen that in forever. This guy's a freak. Thought you'd like it. Scene transition. Atlantic Lost Belt, Cryptor meeting room. A cold chamber layered in obsidian and gold, flickering with magical panels and crystalline projections. Most members were present via hologram. But seated at the long table in person, his arms folded behind his back, stood Kirshtaria Wodime. Beside him, lounging on a throne she likely brought herself, was Koyanskaya, legs crossed, tail flicking lazily. On the surrounding screens hovered the faces of the remaining cryptors. Kadok Zemlupus, tense. Peperoncino, fanning himself. Ophelia, stoic as ever. Hanako Akuta, adjusting her glasses. Daebit Sem void, unmoving, expression unreadable. Kirshtaria watched the footage Beryl sent, arms slowly lowering as the final echo of, Hail Grand Marshal, played. Magic, he murmured. Actual magic, not reconstructed magecraft. Koyanskaya chuckled. And here I thought we had the market cornered on overpowered anomalies. But this one, he's got style. That little shadow trick was cute. Kadok leaned forward in his projection, swallowing hard. Are we even sure he's human? That was more than 10 million units. He didn't even chant anything. Hanako remained still, her voice cold. He moved like a ruler class. And not like the common servant class. Pepe smiled faintly. Ooh, scary scary, the 10 million shadows and still room for manners. That Belian was deliciously terrifying. Ophelia Fumersalone looked down, her expression thoughtful. Even his servants react to him like he's above them. That chainsword knight, his loyalty isn't artificial. It's earned. That's terrifying. Then the feed shifted to Daebit Sem void. He didn't look at the screen. His eyes stared somewhere far off, calculating. He's not from this world, Daebit said plainly. I don't mean in terms of alignment or loyalty. I mean, fundamentally. Kirshtaria took a deep breath, eyes now fixated on the still image of Jinwoo, standing alone with purple eyes and a legion behind him. A true anomaly, he said quietly. One not bound by the age of man, or the age of gods. He turned to Koyanskaya, his expression unreadable. We'll need to watch him. She grinned, resting her chin on her knuckles, eyes glinting with something between intrigue and hunger. Oh, don't worry. I already am. Kirshtaria nodded once. I'll volunteer. Once your date is sufficient, Koyanskaya, I'll go meet this monarch. That's what he's called, right? Ophelia adjusted her eye patch, her tone cautious. The army chanted, Shadow Monarch. She glanced toward the recording, then back to Krishtaria. And I have a bad feeling. Even if you lure him into your lost belt, even there, where you're at your strongest, he might still be a calamity. Pepe gave a nervous little laugh. Ah ha ha, I think I'd be dead in 5 seconds, but hey. Fun always finds room for me. Kadok shook his head quickly. Nope. I'm out. I don't want to be anywhere near that creature. Hanako crossed her arms. Same. I'm not approaching him. But, she paused, eyes narrowing. His shadows. There's something strange. It's like, they were already dead once. But now they serve him. Support me on patreon.com, Xander 11111, extra 10 chapter. Xander's own creators' thoughts. 7 comments 0 vote. FGO English Lost Belt 04, The Cryptors Part 2. David had been quiet, unmoving, his hologram cold, almost surreal. Then, as he turned to leave, his eyes flicked back to the room. Suddenly, a foreign symbol flickered on every hologram panel. Strange, angular, pulsing with ancient logic. None of them recognized it. But it spread across the cryptor devices like a virus. David stopped. His voice finally broke the silence. Our system is being hacked. Hanako furrowed her brow. What? Koyanskaya straightened slightly, tail curling with unease. This is the first time I've ever seen something like this in a Lost Belt, and I've seen a lot. Krishtaria turned to the side. Beryl, if you've been compromised, I suggest. Hey. Beryl raised both hands, sweat now on his brow. No one's beside me. No tech. No trick. I'm alone. Suddenly, every cryptor panel flickered, once, twice, before a new hologram assembled from distorted static. A layered voice broke through the hum of digital interference. Jinwoo's voice. Calm. Smooth. Almost amused. You sure they can still see me? Offensive bias. Another voice answered, cold, mechanical, ancient. A tone stripped of emotion, forged from sheer pragmatism. Offensive bias. A mockery is added. A race bound to a single planet, tangled in primitive culture, dares to challenge Forerunner superiority. The Lost Belts, meanwhile, are still formulations of variable-based probability trees. Predictable. Solvable. Jinwoo's hologram came into full clarity. He now stood before them, arms folded, purple eyes glowing faintly, shadow flickering behind him like coiled serpents. Good enough, offensive bias, he said without looking back. His eyes scanned the room of cryptors calmly. Greetings, cryptors. I believe this is the first time we've all seen each other, formally. The silence from the others was immediate, tense, coiled, uncertain. Ophelia narrowed her gaze. How did you hack this? This chamber isn't even fully real. Jinwoo didn't answer right away. Instead, he simply pointed toward Beryl's projection. I have to admit, he said with a small grin, I bet on myself a little. He clasped his hands behind his back like a professor explaining a riddle. But I didn't expect Beryl Gut, the resident psychopath, to be so generous. Broadcasting valuable enemy intelligence across unshielded links. He tilted his head mockingly. That gave offensive bias, the only AI in the galaxy capable of neutralizing interdimensional nightmares, enough to slide right in. Like a whisper through a door left slightly open. He smiled wider. Just a shadow slipping through a crack. Beryl turned pale. You hacked us through me. Not intentionally. I just gambled on a flaw. Jinwoo shrugged. You delivered. Ophelia clenched her jaw. Smartass. Jinwoo gave a low chuckle. I prefer the term tactician. Krishtaria opened his mouth to respond. But before he could speak, Koyanskaya, ever the chaotic wildcard, leaned forward, resting her chin in one hand, smirking with fanged playfulness. Do you have emotions, darling bias? She purred. Can I tempt you? Or are you just a big old mech with too many cameras and no sense of touch? For a moment, the screens went dead silent, until offensive bias responded, voices cold as circuitry and war's card code. Query added. Supreme Executor, permission requested. May I dissect this specimen? Jinwoo's eyes didn't blink. She can shift between lost belts. That's valuable. He tilted his head slightly. Let's test it. Suddenly, a blinding beam of energy ripped through the hologram chamber, fired from a crackling slipspace portal above them. A sentinel beam, blue, precise, deadly, grazed where Koyanskaya had just stood. A second beam followed. Then a third. Aggressor sentinels from Zeta Halo emerged like ghosts, mechanical wings spread as they fired from slipspace rifts with no regard for location barriers. Koyanskaya twirled midair as she dodged, her heels skimming the floor, taunting with every movement. Careful. You might ruin my makeup, you photogenic toaster. Krishtaria froze, his gaze fixed on the unnatural fissure hanging in midair. That wasn't teleportation. It wasn't rayshift. It was like reality opened. A corridor between realms. Between lost belts. No, impossible. The other cryptors remained silent. Even David blinked once. No one had ever seen something like this. But just as Koyanskaya prepared another twirl, a black hand, chitinous and gnarled like a dagger forged from bone and insect, erupted from another rift beneath her. It pierced straight through her chest. But no blood came. Her body flickered. And her grin cracked slightly. The hand retracted instantly into the slip space, along with its owner. Beru's voice followed through the comms, guttural and calm. My liege, I have secured the bitch. Jinwoo remained silent. He lifted one hand, two fingers pointed in the air. A spatial cube shimmered in front of him, crackling faintly with darkness. Inside it, Koyanskaya's heart, perfectly extracted, floated in stasis. A quiet, tight seal around it. Across from him, Koyanskaya's confident posture crumbled. Her grin vanished. Her eyes widened as she realized what was missing from her body. She dropped to one knee. You give me that back, you shitty, shadowy gigolo. She hissed through her teeth. Jinwoo didn't flinch. He calmly clenched his fingers around the cube. The spatial seal compressed the cube. On the floor, Koyanskaya writhed, her body convulsing as invisible pain laced through every nerve. Her hands clawed at the ground, her back arching. She screamed between clenched teeth. Jinwoo's voice came slow and sharp. Very funny, someone like you, who takes pleasure in making people suffer in every way imaginable. He stepped forward, now begging to have something returned. Koyanskaya glared at him, still panting, rage boiling behind her amber gaze. But then, like flipping a mask, her expression changed. She smirked through the pain. We can do business, she gasped. I mean it. I like profits. We both know I'm useful. Jinwoo tilted his head. No. He lowered the cube slightly, shadows swirling tighter around it. You don't have what I need. Except to be a jester. A tense silence followed, until Krishtaria, still calm, still composed, spoke, his gaze never leaving Jinwoo's projection. Before things escalate further, perhaps a conversation first, Shadow Monarch. Jinwoo gave a small nod. Just call me Jinwoo. It's enough that my army calls me that. Krishtaria accepted the correction without pause. All right, Jinwoo. Although I don't yet understand where exactly your companion, offensive bias, resides, I want to ask something directly. He folded his arms. Are you a metaphysical construct, or an artificial god? The silence was broken by a flat, mechanical voice. Supreme Executor, permission to reveal myself. Jinwoo blinked once and looked around. He was still standing in the arena, now silent and empty, save for three figures still present. Morgan, watching intently, Baobin Sith, at her side, and Barghest, now conscious again, seated but alert. Jinwoo spoke quietly. Morgan, one of my subordinates wants to appear. You mind? Morgan raised an eyebrow. Are you joking, Jinwoo? You already darkened the skies with millions of shadow soldiers earlier. Asking permission now feels almost polite. Jinwoo gave the smallest smirk. Proceed. Suddenly, the sky above the lost belt of English split open. A massive rift tore itself into reality, not through magic, not through rayshift, something entirely alien. A storm of metal and light flooded the horizon. Hundreds of thousands of sentinels emerged, taking formation in silence. Their forms gleamed in geometric perfection, forming a floating lattice above Camelot. And then it appeared, offensive bias. A mechanical behemoth, vast enough to dwarf towers, descended slowly, its mass carried not by wings, but by gravitic fields humming with unimaginable power. Its core pulsated with crimson light, a singular red eye fixed forward like a god watching ants. Its elongated frame floated effortlessly, with multiple segmented appendages extending outward, each lined with radiant, ancient forerunner glyphs. Sharp, angular armor interlocked around its central body, the design impossibly clean, a perfect blend of war and logic. Its voice echoed across both the arena and the hologram chamber where the cryptors sat. I believe you already know the answer, Krishtaria Wodime. The words weren't spoken with pride. They were stated like a law. Unyielding. Cold. Final. Krishtaria narrowed his eyes, unmoving, but deep within, a single thought echoed like iron dropped in still water. So this is what it means to create a system beyond the tree of fantasy. Something that cannot be ruled, persuaded, or reasoned with. From one of the holograms, Pepperoncino leaned back, his fan lowered for once. Oh sweet stars above, that thing's not just an AI, it's an empire. Hanako Akuta, arms folded, brow furrowed in visible tension, thought in silence. That's a cosmic predator. It eliminates, sustains, learns. Kadok Zemlupus, already on edge since the first projection, nearly lost the will to breathe. Not that my lost belt already the weakest, but how could I fight something like that? How could anyone? Still kneeling, Koyanskaya trembled. Her heart pulsed quietly inside the spatial cube hovering near Jinwoo. Even now, pain flickering through her every nerve, she stared at offensive bias in horror. Even if I kill him, that thing will just make another to replace him. Ophelia Famersalone, whose entire life had been rooted in discipline and calculation, had to pause. This isn't Magecraft. This is pure cause and effect, weaponized. Every input, every outcome, predicted, corrected, enforced. Then there was Beryl Gut, still in the English Lost Belt, hiding at the edge of the now empty arena. The arena that once felt like a stage now felt like a battlefield he didn't belong on. He laughed. It was loud, cracked, and tinged with madness. Ahahaha, fuck. He staggered backward, running a hand through his hair. What a fucking day. All because of me, huh? I just wanted to share some intel about the enemy, and the enemy hacked our entire system. Not just that, no. Crazy Sung Jinwoo went ahead and showed off another goddamn weapon. The others said nothing. But Daebit Sem Void, who until now had said and shown nothing, finally moved. Just his eyes. He watched offensive bias. Watched its posture. Its scanning behavior. Its positioning. A complete logic tree, he thought. That understands loss, adaptation, and probability mapping, we're not just outmatched. We're being mapped. But Daebit Sem Void, who until now had said and shown nothing, finally moved. Just his eyes. He tracked offensive bias, studying the way it floated, the way its red eye shifted across the room with surgical precision. Watched how the segments of its plating adjusted minutely, recalibrating positions based on information no one else could see. Bonus dialogue to show how intelligent Daebit is. A complete logic tree, Daebit thought. That understands loss, adaptation, and probability mapping, we're not just outmatched. We're being mapped. Bonus dialogue to show how intelligent Daebit is. Then Jinwoo casually turned toward the cryptor projections. His voice came quiet, casual. Any questions? The cryptors didn't move. They all stared. All of them, silently, each with the same thought. All of us are afraid of you. Afraid of what you are. Afraid of what your army can do. And you just joke about it. Finally, Ophelia Famersalone stepped forward in her projection, voice composed but tense. Then I'll ask, Jinwoo, the Shadow Monarch, and Supreme Executor of Offensive Bias. Jinwoo looked at her for a moment. This is probably too much for her, he thought silently. But aloud, he gave a slight nod. Go ahead. Shoot. Ophelia didn't hesitate. How did bias bypass the rayshift barriers? This system isn't even complete. Jinwoo lifted his hand, his shadow swirling with quiet intensity. A sudden dark purple portal opened beside Ophelia's hologram, warping the space with an eerie silence. Ophelia's eyes widened. The portal was right beside her, on the edge of her own lost belt, the Norse one. Jinwoo spoke without raising his voice. I can also open portals. But I need coordinates, of course. He nodded toward the edge of the rift. Bias provided them. It's actually very simple. But if you're asking how he did it. Jinwoo's expression sharpened slightly. Do you even understand what you're dealing with? He stepped forward slightly in the hologram. You're speaking to the only AI in existence who saved his entire galaxy from the precursor infestation. Without him, every sentient species in his domain would have been devoured by the flood. He tilted his head slightly. If the galaxy was neighboring yours, you'd already be swarmed. If slipspace was open to this system, you'd be gone in a week. Right. The AI responded without hesitation. Affirmative. This primitive world resides in close proximity to the edge of my operational range. Calculating slipspace jumps here required minimal correction. Its voice remained mechanical, but now there was weight behind it. Authority. Then its tone shifted, sharper. Heavier. Almost condescending, though it lacked any true malice. Additionally, comparing your computing methods, and your rayshift, a primitive workaround to causal limitations, with my capabilities, is a joke. Even the lowest tier caretaker monitor stationed on a dormant installation can breach this level of complexity. I do not hack your systems. I merely observe, and your systems yield. I have fought wars larger than all of your lost belts in history combined. I did not merely survive a 1,436.6 odds engagement against mendicant bias. I adapted. I endured. I calculated beyond chaos. Where his armies outnumbered mine, I remained. Because I am not driven by glory, ambition, or pride. I am designed only to win. 3 comments 0 vote. FGO English Lost Belt 05, The Cryptors Part 3. Then from the hologram panel, Pepperoncino gave a nervous, forced chuckle, waving his fan in front of his face like he was deflecting pressure. Scary, bias, you really are, anti-galaxy. If there was a noble phantasm called anti-galaxy, you'd be it. But before he could continue, Ophelia cut in sharply, her voice tense but focused. I need to interrupt this, Pepe. She faced the AI directly. Bias, what will you do with all the data you've gathered? Technically, you've already won, before any of us got the chance to act. Offensive Bias responded instantly. Answer being added. That decision is left to the Supreme Executor himself. All eyes turned back to Jinwoo, whose arms were crossed casually. He gave a small shrug. Dunno. Probably dump it. Or maybe. He glanced off to the side, smirking. Set up a teleport point, like in a game. You know, just in case I need something from this world later. Pepperoncino grinned again, his fan fluttering. My turn, Ophelia. He leaned closer into his projection. You don't seem like the type to follow orders, Jinwoo. So what's the real deal between you and this shiny tin god? Are you the brain, or is he? Jinwoo's response came without hesitation. I relieved offensive bias from his primary function, by permanently killing the thing he was originally created to guard against. Then offensive bias added, his voice cutting cleanly through the moment. An AI without a designated purpose is equivalent to termination. Thus, I serve the Shadow Monarch, Jinwoo. I have designated him as Supreme Executor, because no one in my galaxy, nor yours, possesses capabilities equal to his. The words echoed like a final verdict. Then, without missing a beat, Jinwoo turned his gaze toward one specific panel. His calm, piercing blue eyes landed on Hanako Akuta. You've been quiet, he said simply. But I can tell, you want to say something. Probably about me, not bias. Hanako blinked once. There was no panic, no fear, just sharp calculation in her eyes. How did your shadow army become so loyal? She asked. They obey you willingly, absolutely. That's not control. That's devotion. Jinwoo nodded slowly, his tone flat but firm. Anyone I choose, rises under my banner. Not as a slave, not as a puppet, as someone reborn. His voice lowered. They know what they were. And they know what I made them into. At that moment, from both the hologram feed and from a nearby terminal in the arena, offensive bias spoke again, his omnipresent surveillance bleeding into every tech line, every echo of wireless code. His red mechanical eye tracked over to the far edge of the English Lost Belt arena, where one figure had remained largely silent. Watching. Measuring. Daybit sem void. You and I, seem to share a similar condition. Purpose despite abandonment. You act, even when odds stand against you. Daybit didn't respond aloud. But he smirked. Just faintly. Barely enough for anyone to notice. And in his mind, he whispered to himself. I just attracted another alien. Then Jinwoo's voice came, calm and direct. Daybit. Let's talk. Face to face. He shifted slightly. Offensive bias will slipspace you to the Atlantic Lost Belt, where Krishtaria's council chamber resides. Daybit turned his head toward Krishtaria, seated silently at the center of the projections, watching all unfold. There's no rule against personal meetings, Daybit said flatly. The alien god only warned us not to interfere in each other's affairs. This isn't interference. It's a third-party ground. Between Lost Belts. If such a thing's needed. Jinwoo raised his hand. A swirling dark portal opened beside him, fluid, silent, shaped by his shadow. He stepped through without looking back. At the same time, offensive bias opened a slipspace rupture near Daybit, faintly glowing, distorting the air like glass under pressure. Daybit walked through it without hesitation. Watching all of this unfold, Pepperoncino waved his fan and tilted his head. Should I get invited too? I mean, everything's more fun when I'm around. Ophelia narrowed her eyes slightly, arms crossed. At this rate, this slipspace tech might just put Koyanskaya out of a job. Koyanskaya, still kneeling, her heart sealed in a cube floating beside Jin Woo, said nothing. She just stared into the rift. Quiet. Still. Eyes calculating. Jinwoo stepped calmly through his dark portal, shadows spiraling and sealing behind him like the closing wings of a great beast. He emerged into the Atlantic Lostbelt Council chamber, his presence as quiet as it was absolute. A second later, the air shimmered, offensive biases slipspace rupture opening like a seamless crack in reality. Daebit Sem Void stepped through, without a word, without pause. Across the circular stone hall lit by radiant mana conduits and golden crystalline light, Krishtaria Wodaim looked between them. Still composed. Still regal. I suppose this is the first time, Krishtaria said, that an anomaly and a cryptor are meeting face to face. Daebit walked forward and took a seat without ceremony. Jinwoo sat opposite him, calm and unreadable, arms resting loosely at his sides. After a moment of silence, Daebit spoke. Someone of your caliber doesn't show up in a world like this without a reason. He paused. That means you have something I need. Or I have something you want. Either way, your existence alone signals a very problematic outcome. Jinwoo leaned back slightly. His eyes, now a steady blue, glinted. Offensive bias can't predict the future. Not the way you think. He raised one hand slightly. He can map outcomes, victory routes. He can calculate success. But there are situations where the chance to win doesn't exist. No path. No probability. Just death. Jinwoo's voice dipped lower. I've already outsmarted that. Then his gaze sharpened toward Daebit. And you, that's where surefire comes in. He tapped the air once, a faint ripple of shadow dancing around his fingertip. My third problem requires something unusual. Something inevitable. Daebit remained motionless. Then, quietly, before that. I want to know one thing. His voice was flat but firm. You won't harm my comrades. Will you? Jinwoo didn't blink. They're not involved, he said. Whether you refuse or agree, they're not part of this equation. I said I like surefire, that means guaranteed victory. That means this is just an optional route for me. Not mandatory. Daebit closed his eyes briefly. Then opened them. I'm listening. Jinwoo nodded. I have a problem in my galaxy. But before I explain, let me be clear, my galaxy and offensive biases are different. He's not from where I'm from. He leaned slightly forward. But my galaxy has something, similar to what exists here. Like your, Gaia, or, Alaya. I don't know the details. But it's sentient. Daebit responded evenly, Gaia is the will of the planet. Alaya is more like, humanity's collective survival instinct. A synonym for the counter force. Jinwoo gave a faint nod. My galaxy has something like that too. It's called the Force. A metaphysical field that grants power to those sensitive to it. Or more accurately, those with high enough midichlorian counts. He raised his hand, fingers arcing slightly. Allow me to demonstrate. Force lightning. A sharp crack exploded from his palm as black lightning surged into the air, twisting unnaturally. With a sharp thrust, he fired it forward. The bolt tore across the chamber, obliterating part of the concrete wall behind the council table in a violent burst. Ophelia, watching through her still-active projection, narrowed her eyes. And this isn't Magecraft. Jinwoo turned his head slightly, eyes cold. Does a normal Magecraft destroy a planetary surface in a single strike? He turned back to Daebit. The Force isn't structured like your systems. It's wild. It's ancient. It's alive. And, it can destroy a planet's surface with one attack. Daebit leaned forward slightly. Where do I come in? Jinwoo answered without hesitation. That's where your expertise comes in. He raised his hand, shadows curling around his fingers like ink in water. This quest, if we're calling it that, is like one of those hidden missions in a game. No description. No objective log. But it has to be completed. He paused, making sure his words hit clearly. I'm not asking you to die. I'm not asking you to get captured. His gaze sharpened slightly. But you will serve as the surefire, the guaranteed route. The hidden piece that makes the optional path a path worth taking. The silence after his words lingered, until Krishtaria Wodaim finally spoke from his seat, his voice steady and composed. We still have our role under the alien god. We weren't revived to stroll outside our worlds. Our duty is to nurture our lost belts, and between every cryptor, I know I'll win. My fantasy tree is already growing. Jinwoo turned his head slightly toward Krishtaria. A faint smirk touched the corner of his lips. If the alien god somehow changes directives, problem solved, no. That's when Hanako Akuta, who had been silent this entire time, finally spoke. Don't tell me, you're going to kill a god, Jinwoo. Jinwoo didn't answer immediately. He turned his head slightly, just enough to glance at the air beside him. And raised his hand, forming a signal, quick and precise. Then the voice of offensive bias responded, emotionless and immediate. Affirmative. A rip in space opened, quiet and controlled. Offensive bias, along with a fleet of sentinels, vanished into the fold, returning to Zeta Halo without fanfare, without threat. David leaned back slightly in his chair, watching the distortion seal itself shut, on Jinwoo projection hologram. Offensive bias Jinwoo, I will get the job done, he said flatly. That's enough equation to handle the alien god problem. He shifted his eyes toward Krishtaria. And our leader will calm down. He turned to Jinwoo. Now, my condition and reward. Jinwoo nodded once. Name it. David folded his hands, calm and composed. If any of my fellow cryptors wish to join this quest, I want that allowed. No pressure, no command. Voluntary. He glanced toward the projections. Of course, not Beryl. He's too unstable. He'll endanger the mission. From his feed, Beryl Gut lazily raised both hands in surrender, reclining in his seat. Fine, fine. I'm the psycho. Got it. I'll just watch the fireworks from here. David returned to Jinwoo. And for my reward, when I arrive in your galaxy, I want to learn your force system. I want to understand it. He paused. And I want you to grant me midichlorians. Jinwoo didn't hesitate. That reward is impossible for me to grant right now. From the projection, Pepperoncino gasped in exaggerated shock, waving his fan. Oh my, someone as great as the Shadow Monarch can't grant it. Dear God. Jinwoo turned toward him briefly, unmoved. The requirement to manipulate and grant midichlorians is having 100,000 within myself. He looked back to David. I've only reached half of that. Even if you solve the current problem, it'll only raise me by a quarter, not the half I still need. David didn't flinch. Then I'll get it done, he said simply. Let's make your midichlorian count reach 100,000. He folded his arms, eyes sharp. I know you won't get involved in my personal mission. But using outside power to raise your ability, for the sake of granting it to someone else. A faint smirk touched his lips. That, you do. And I'll be that someone. Suddenly, offensive bias spoke, only in Jinwoo's mind, voice clinical and final. Task completed. I have hacked the third-rate planetary logic engine known as CHALDEAS. 2 comments 0 vote. FGO English Lost Belt 05.5, David Theory. At that very moment, a soft ping echoed next to Krishtaria's desk. He looked down at a glowing glyph, an urgent transmission. The sender, alien god. Krishtaria's read it. All Lost Belt expansion and infiltration operations toward proper human history are to be halted until further notice. Krishtaria's eyes narrowed. He slowly turned his head toward Jinwoo. Did your offensive bias just blackmail a god? He asked quietly. The other cryptors didn't speak. They just stared. Ophelia froze. Hanako lowered her eyes. Pepperoncino didn't even smile. Kadok looked like he wanted to disappear. And Beryl leaned back and whispered, well. Shit. Jinwoo said nothing. He just smiled. Then, without a word, David reached into his coat and flicked a small black card toward Jinwoo. It slid through the air. Jinwoo caught it midspin. Written on it in silent ink, do you know who the true enemy is? Jinwoo looked up, his expression unchanged. Then, with a flick of his fingers, he summoned a tendril of ink-black shadow. The darkness slithered silently across the floor and crawled up David's hand, forming a simple sigil, just for him. Without a word, Jinwoo extended one finger. Shadows slithered from it like ink bleeding through paper. The tendril snaked forward and wrapped gently around David's hand, marking it with a fluid sigil. It shifted, then settled into a clear message. CHALDEAS will be weakened enough for you to destroy it, personally. You won't need to summon Ort. With enough firepower, especially through the Force, you can end it without risking Earth annihilation. David stared at the message. A good courtesy, huh? Jinwoo turned his gaze toward Krishtaria, tone light, but edged. Krishtaria. You don't mind if the English Lost Belt removed from this world, right? Krishtaria leaned back, thoughtful. The main objective of every cryptor is to nurture their own Lost Belt. Eventually, we were meant to clash, compete. That was the directive. He paused, then added without hesitation. And between all of us, Beryl Gut's Lost Belt is by far the most dangerous. Twisted, unstable, even for him. Krishtaria then looked back at Jinwoo. At least I appreciate you, Jinwoo. Because of you, every lost belt gets a chance to exist, even if it's just for a short while. He waved his hand toward the side, already sending a silent directive. Beryl. Move to the Indian lost belt. The English one's already lost anyway. Beryl, still watching from his projection, threw his arms up. Come on. I was the first one to step foot here. Pepe laughed, folding his arms. No buts, Beryl. Besides, if you're gonna be a backstabber, at least die with your friends, yeah. Sounds poetic. Ophelia turned toward Beryl, her voice flat. Technically, this whole mess, being hacked, overridden, blindsided. It was because of you. You gave that crazy AI the crack it needed to hack us all. Beryl groaned, rubbing his forehead. Shit, man, I didn't even know there was something like that. I just wanted to pass some intel, not open a damn gate to hell. Krishtaria exhaled softly, then gestured toward another projection. Koyanskaya. Do your thing. Evacuate Beryl from the English lost belt. Koyanskaya snarled through clenched teeth. At least give me back my heart, you fuck. Shadow Magecraft bastard, and I want compensation, money, interest, hazard pay. Before she could finish, Jinwoo raised one hand. The spatial cube holding her heart shimmered, hovering gently in the air between them. At the same time, he ignited Vectivus lightsaber, the black lightsaber, its hum low and unnatural, the blade swallowing light rather than emitting it. Koyanskaya's eyes widened. Her lips parted, and she paled. Shit. Bitch. Okay, I get it. I'm going. She vanished with a flicker, jumping between lost belts to evacuate Beryl to the Indian lost belt. As silence returned, David glanced at the weapon still humming in Jinwoo's hand. That sword comes from your galaxy. Jinwoo retracted the blade with a soft hiss, the shadows folding inward. Yeah. Blue and green, maybe purple, are for the good guys. Red's for the bad. He paused, holding up the now inactive hilt. As for black. A faint grin tugged at his mouth. It's very rare. Even over there. Pepperoncino clapped once, smiling wide. I've decided, I'll join you on your little adventure, David, sounds fun. David turned his head slightly, calm. Anyone else? Aside from Krishtaria, since I already know he'll either study our enemies or fortify his lost belt. Krishtaria gave a single nod. That's correct, David. I'll strengthen my lost belt. And prepare. Kadak raised a hand lazily, already reaching for his terminal. Leave me out of this. That's uncharted territory, outside the systems we know. I'm not risking it. He tapped a command. His hologram blinked out immediately. Ophelia spoke up with quiet firmness. If Krishtaria-sama is going, I'm accompanying him. Akuta Hanako folded her arms. I'm still undecided. Jinwoo glanced across the remaining projections. Then that brings the total to double the amount of players, he said. Since their servants will probably come along too. He paused. And that's not counting the Lost Belt Kings. Ophelia nodded. The Lost Belt Kings will probably stay to guard their domains. It's too risky to leave them exposed. Jinwoo tilted his head slightly toward her. Your Skathoxkady has a very strong motherhood instinct. Best you keep that under control, yeah. Ophelia nodded in silence, taking Jinwoo's warning seriously. Jinwoo turned to David, his tone casual but direct. David, if you want to contact me, do it through offensive bias. Just go to your communication room, or the Cryptor Council chamber like this one. The moment you enter, he'll notice. From his projection feed, Pepperoncino let out a playful sigh. Oh, all of our tech just got hijacked by your AI, my dear sweet Jinwoo. At this point, he probably knows what brand of tea I like. Jinwoo didn't reply. He only gave a slight glance, then turned as the dark portal behind him twisted open, his return path to the English Lost Belt. He stepped through silently. No parting words. As the shadows swallowed his form, only David and Krishtaria remained in the physical chamber. A long moment passed. Krishtaria finally broke the silence. Do you trust him, David, once you become his surefire? David looked toward the faint ripple left behind by Jinwoo's exit. His voice was steady. His AI is pure logic. Cold. Calculative. It has a very clear hatred for lying, almost like it sees deception as corruption. He tapped the table softly once. What Jinwoo relieved that AI from, its primary duty, must have been unimaginable. Even your Olympus gods, Krishtaria. I don't think they could have handled it. Krishtaria said nothing. Because deep down, he agreed. Then Ophelia broke the silence, a little surprised. I never expected that coming from you, David. Usually you ignore everything, but now you're interested in that thing called the Force and the midichlorians Jinwoo mentioned. David leaned back. When I was a kid, I loved sci-fi anime. Stories with aliens, other worlds, different systems. That stuff always stuck with me. He rested one elbow on the chair. And when Jinwoo said there's another galaxy, with its own rules and structures. Yeah, that caught my attention. And probably, it's in all of your minds too, right? That power of his, that shadow monarch thing, it's tied to the Force somehow, isn't it? Hanako nodded, thoughtful. Of course it is. It feels like real magic, like what's lost to our world. Ancient. Pure. Raw. Kirshtaria chuckled slightly. For someone who's lived a very long time, Hanako, you're still incredibly clumsy. Hanako immediately pouted and bared her sharp vampire teeth. HMPH. That was uncalled for. Pepperoncino smiled warmly. Don't be like that, Hanako, that part of your identity is something worth protecting. Even if you're a little adorable when you're embarrassed. David raised his hand slightly, bringing the focus back. Let's stay on topic. They're different. His shadow power, the army of millions, all immortal, all tied to him, that isn't the Force. He tapped his fingers again. But the black lightning he shot from his fingertips. That's Force energy. It behaves like something else. He narrowed his eyes. Which means Jinwoo isn't just one thing. He's two systems fused. Or maybe more. From the projection, Ophelia began tapping her own fingers against the table. Can you be more elaborate? She asked, voice focused. David nodded slightly. His first power, Shadow Monarch, that's primary. He manipulates it naturally. Effortlessly. It feels like it was always his. The way his army responds to him, how they chant, line up in the sky, form ranks without a word, that's not a spell or contract. That's loyalty. That's dominion. He glanced toward where Jinwoo once stood. And then there's the Force. That's his secondary power. I'm absolutely sure it needs some kind of condition or trigger. When he used the lightning, I'll call it Force lightning for now, it wasn't like his shadows. There was effort. Focus. Ophelia raised an eyebrow. So I was right, it's similar to Magecraft. But, more robust. Kirshtaria leaned in slightly. Magecraft has layers of conditions. Even my anima animosphere can't function without the framework of a lost belt. It requires the tree of fantasy, the domain's structure. But the Force, it probably doesn't need anything that complex. He paused. Except, maybe, emotion. David nodded once. Yes. That's one of the conditions. He stared forward, thinking aloud. When Jinwoo used that lightning, it was with arrogance. Calm, yes, but confident, like he wanted to show his superiority. He embraced the power without hesitation. That intent, that feeling, it was part of it. He closed his eyes briefly. The Force doesn't obey a spell formula. It obeys will, presence, emotion. That's why it's terrifying. Behind him, a slipspace portal had already formed, quiet and pulsing with faint distortion, waiting to take him back to the South American Lost Belt. Just as he was about to step through, Pepperoncino called out with a soft laugh. David, be a darling. If you get the Force formula, and maybe those lovely midichlorians, share them with your friend, him. David glanced back once, expression flat but not hostile. You should have asked when Jinwoo and I negotiated. That was your chance. But if my role as his surefire exceeds expectations, he might grant it to all of you. All cryptors. Except Beryl. Jinwoo already considers him dangerous. I'm certain he would have killed Beryl if Koyanskaya hadn't evacuated him from the English Lost Belt to the Indian one. He looked to the side. Beryl's hologram had gone inactive 5 minutes ago. Pepperoncino sighed with exaggerated flair. A shame. I wish Beryl could have heard that himself. About how much of a bastard he really is. The portal pulsed once more. David turned and stepped through, gone without another word. Pepperoncino turned to the rest of the projections, twirling dramatically. Till next time, my lovely comrades, when we meet again, I'll be using Force Lightning while AI dances around me. With a wink, he waved his fingers and deactivated his hologram feed. Hanako Okuda glanced forward, voice quiet. If possible, that Force ability might help fulfill one of my wishes. She didn't elaborate. Her eyes dimmed slightly, and she turned off her projection in silence. A pause hung over the room. Then Ophelia spoke softly. Kirshtaria-sama, will the Force also grant your objective? Kirshtaria looked up from his chair, gaze steady. That, I don't know. But what I do know, is that Jinwoo is confident it can destroy an entire planetary surface. And that might be exactly what I need, for humanity to stand a chance against the alien god. Ophelia's eyes flickered. Her breath caught slightly. She knew. She knew the meaning behind those words. His true plan. The betrayal of the very being that granted them all the lost belts. But she never expected him to speak it so openly. Krishtaria-sama, she said, voice almost trembling, why would you say that so? Krishtaria waved one hand dismissively. Don't worry. That overpowered AI of Jinwoo's has likely already shut down all surveillance. We have more privacy now than ever before. Ophelia didn't respond immediately. Then nodded. I wish you luck with your impossible mission, Krishtaria-sama. With that, her hologram blinked out. The chamber was now silent. Krishtaria, alone, turned toward the grand doorway of his council chamber. Only footsteps echoing through the stillness as he walked out, calm, deliberate, resolute. English Lost Belt. Jinwoo stepped out of the swirling darkness of his portal, the shadows closing behind him as he returned to the now silent arena, the very place where Barghest had fought his Grand Marshal, Bellion, and lost, even after unleashing her trump card. The air still held the weight of that overwhelming battle. At the far edge of the stone platform stood Morgan Le Fay, regal and composed, despite the tension in her voice. Beside her, Barghest remained quiet, her pride wounded but her stance firm. Balban Sith stood close, arms crossed and watchful, while Melusine hovered just behind them, eyes narrowed, guarding the queen from the rear. Morgan stepped forward, her voice measured and graceful. I am aware, Sir Jinwoo, that this world, the English Lost Belt, is a mistake in the Grand Order. A dead end. But, she paused. Please, grant us more time. Time to enjoy what little remains of it. Jinwoo stood still, his presence alone making the air feel heavier. His voice was calm. Did I say this world needs to be destroyed? Pruned. He shook his head slowly, a faint smirk touching his lips. No. I never said that. I said I would remove it from proper human history. That's different. But most people, they have a habit of misinterpreting things. It's a common mistake. One I enjoy watching.